Here we are again for another episode of Words of Wokism Random Rundown. Okay, this is number 5. Today's word is representation or represented or underrepresented, any version of represented. You really need to understand what this means and what it doesn't mean because it is used all the time in education, both higher education and K-12. So most often you hear this as underrepresented groups. Well, what do they mean by that? They mean people who belong to usually racial demographic groups. It's usually racial or ethnic, specifically Black. Let's be honest here. We're talking about Black and brown most often, okay? Who are not showing up in terms of numbers in the lists of people doing certain things at a school. Could be getting good grades, could be not getting disciplined. In other words, they're getting disciplined more often, all right? So now they're overrepresented, and white kids are underrepresented on the list of kids getting suspended, all right? So it could be positive or negative. It could be number of kids on the list in the AP class, number of kids who are going to top tier colleges, whatever. And then of course at the colleges, number of kids in the class who are getting accepted or getting, making it to graduation or majoring in certain majors or whatever. There's a lot of talk of being underrepresented, and Black and brown students are typically the ones referred to when they say underrepresented. You might hear overrepresented if they're honest, and then it's usually Asian kids. Yeah, it's usually Asian students. And by Asian, I mean really anybody from, India all the way over to China, Japan, it could be Malaysia, Indonesia, it doesn't matter. I mean, that whole region. Anybody doing very, very well in school who is Asian, they're overrepresented. That's what it will be described as. Which is interesting because we're supposed to be a white supremacist country, and yet you don't really hear too often about overrepresentation of white kids on the honor roll because they're not. We're not going to talk about that because it would puncture the balloon of the myth of white supremacy. But anyhow, getting back to representation and so forth. What it basically amounts to is that your child is not an individual. He or she is an avatar. Am I allowed to say he or she? I hope so. I hope to you I am, because to me, that's what they are. He or she. He or she is a cartoon character. They're just a little checkbox. They're not a person. And I often wonder, well, what actually makes someone Black or brown enough to count? What about the kids who are biracial? And that's for anybody, right? It's not just Black or brown, it could be Asian too. There are a lot of biracial kids who are like one parent is Asian, one isn't, whatever. But how do you even represent? It might count. They're looking for representation too of LGBTQ. They're looking for representation of women a little bit, but mostly if they're also Black and brown, and so forth and so on. But it really means individuals are just avatars standing in for minority group we need to elevate, okay? Or we need to do our penance towards as presumably a white supremacist society. This is all about penance. This is all about a kind of revenge and penance. The notion, I guess, is that if you have enough people in a specific group of people who represent that category, you're virtuous. You're doing something good as a school. That means you're good. You're doing the work. And if you don't, you're doing something wrong. The onus is never really on the student, right? Or the family, or even the teachers, or the school in some other way. In other words, as long as they get them there by hook or by crook, change the rules, change the grades, change everything. Oh, look, there they are. Then the school is good. It's not because that would take a while to just say, wow, we're not getting the results in terms of the reading ability and so forth. That's going to put the onus back on the teachers, the students. Ooh, that's messy and takes a long time. And, people are going to have to own their role in it, and they're going to have to be responsible for the outcomes. Uh-oh, that's not going to work. That makes them individually responsible for something. We can't have that. That's just too hard. It's much easier to just go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, you're in the AP class. I'm not joking. I wish I were joking. When I was a kid, getting into AP was a matter of recommendation. You didn't just sign up to take AP History or AP English or AP anything for that matter. Your prior year teacher recommended you, and you needed that recommendation to get in. It was like an honors class, but because it's a college level class, the presumption was you need to be successful in that class, and that means you need to already be at a certain level of scholarship to handle it, right? Not anymore. Not anymore, because you see certain groups were underrepresented in the AP classes, and we need to get the representation up. So what do? We lower the standards and we say anybody can sign up. Not only anybody can sign up, but teachers, you better start encouraging and nudging your minority students to sign up, whether or not you think they're fully capable of doing it. So what ends up happening? The AP classes themselves have to be, if not literally changed and dumbed down, although they have been, taught differently. What happens when that happens? The teacher doesn't get through all the materials before the AP test. What happens when that happens? The kids don't pass the AP test. And by pass, I mean they don't achieve a score that gets them the college credit, which was presumably the purpose of taking the class. So what was the point? Well, we had representation. We have X percentage of Black and brown students in our AP class. Isn't that great? Super. They didn't get the college credit. They would have done better, and you would have been better to advise them to go take a dual enrollment community college class in that subject so they could actually get college credit. And then you might be able to say that you had a certain percentage of Black and brown kids who were getting college credit as high school students. And you might say, Deb, but how could they handle the class? Believe it or not, because they don't have to take a test and achieve at a very high level, and the work is actually even easier than the AP class. It's not super easy. They still need to be able to handle college level work. But the GPA to get into a community college class is 2.5 or something, sometimes 2.7. It's not as high, believe it or not, as the GPA you would need to do well in an AP class. But AP is more prestigious, Deb. They want AP. They want to, it's so prestigious to be in that class. Well, not if you don't get the credit. I mean, you get high school credit, but so what? You didn't get the college credit. It was a super hard class, a lot of stress, and some kids just drop it because it's so hard. Or, as I said, they lower the standards of this college class so that more people can at least pass the class and not drop out and ruin the representation. And then they make the tests easier, which means, is the college credit really college credit? Is it really college level work? And then what happens? Now you have a kid going into sophomore level classes as a freshman. They can't really handle that. So what happens then? Domino effect, we got to lower the standards of those classes, and so on. So representation is quite poisonous. Yes, the concept, the sort of ideology behind human beings, individual human beings with individual needs and skills and talents and weaknesses, turned into avatars of people of a certain color or a certain background, ethnic background. That ought to creep everyone out. Human beings are not interchangeable. They're just not. We're people. And it's not a bad thing that you need extra time to learn something, or you need extra help with something, or, you're not doing well in school. That's a warning flag to the school and the teachers that they need to help you. They need to help you. Not that we need to make the entire curriculum for everybody easier because we don't have representation amongst the honor roll of people who look like this. Parents aren't sending their kids to school to represent Black people. They're sending their kids to school to represent themselves, to learn for their own life, so they can personally succeed and grow and do things, not so that they can, be part of whatever this collective is that makes black and brown people shine. And are they really shining if people who are mostly white, ironically, are just propping them up and socially promoting them and, well, we got representation for their own benefit? Isn't that kind of a performative virtue? Isn't that a kind of narcissism? To say you've developed representation because you made everything easier, or you're coddling people or whatever. You're not helping them. You're helping yourself. You're certainly upping your numbers and making yourself look good. But wouldn't it be better to be the kind of culture that values educators and schools and colleges who say, we would love to have every person who wants to succeed in our school be able to succeed. So what we're going to look at is we're going to look at the factors that might be contributing to the individual lack of performance of these individuals, and we're going to see what we can do. And the fact that there seems to be a cluster of people who have this thing in common that is, they're not doing well and they all share this characteristic, we're not going to look at that. We're not going to look at that in and of itself. We're going to look around it. In other words, we're going to look at things that we know impact academic outcomes. The shade of your skin doesn't do it. The type of home you grow up in does. Whether there are books there, whether there's time for you to sit and study, whether there's a place for you to sit and study, whether there's chaos or calm, whether you have been read to or somebody can read to you, whether there's, you're scared. Whether maybe you have a learning disability that's gone undiagnosed, whatever. These are factors we can look at and help you do better. But if I'm going to stop at the skin deep level and say, they're black. So, they're not doing well because they're black. And it's because the curriculum is too white. So we need to make the curriculum less white so they can do better. How that's not perceived as an insult, I do not know. But that's how they're going about getting the representation at the K-12 level and the college level. And of course, using affirmative action is just another way to codify it. We're going to leave spaces open for these people, even if they don't do as well as, let's say, Asian students. It's unfair to the Asian students who've worked very hard and actually deserve those spots. It's unfair to the non-Asian students who may have worked very hard, but they haven't earned their place in that particular institution. And you know what? There might be a better place for them to be that they could earn their spot in, where they'd be happier, more productive, and more successful. And then over time and so forth, and maybe their children, and people's like, are you seriously saying that they have to wait for their children, their grandchildren to go to Harvard and they can't go to Harvard? Yes, I'm seriously saying that. Sue me. That's just how it is. I'm sorry. If you're going to have standards and they're going to relate to quality and achievement, then especially in the higher education realm where credentials are supposed to matter more because now it's a credentialing process. It's not just an education for you process. Something that's supposed to tell the outside world I know things. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But in high school, I think we need to do more to think about what are the real causes for these individuals to not succeed. We don't lower things to where they are and go, look, success. We have representation, because you're doing them a disservice. And you're also doing a grave injustice to the people who are here by their effort. And if they're Asian, so be it. Somebody once asked me, so Deb, would you be okay with 100% of the incoming class at MIT being Asian? Yes, I would. Why wouldn't I? If they deserve to be there. If that's what you ended up with in terms of your applicants, and the next nearest person who wasn't Asian was like an order of magnitude but lower on the scale of achievement, then that's as it would be. I don't think it would end up quite like that. I think that's a bit much, an exaggeration. But no, I don't have a problem with that. I also wouldn't mind if they were black. If their scores were the best and if they had the best grades and that they deserve to be there, super. I want the best to be where the best need to be, to get the best training, to become the best doctors and lawyers and engineers and all the things that they might become on the other end of that. Why wouldn't I? I live in this society, in this culture. If they're going to be movers, shakers, leaders, builders, etc., they should be the best. I don't care what they look like. And I genuinely believe it's a fallacy that you somehow do better or you get a better education because the person sitting next to you look different from you. And feels like, what, they'll have a different perspective. Do they though? Do I have a different perspective from another person just because they're Black? There are some things we have a different perspective on because we're of different, race and we have a different upbringing and so forth because of that culture. But are they the things that matter in that environment? Maybe yes, maybe no. It's not an automatic yes. It's not an automatic yes. But they're making it with representation, representative diversity. They're saying it's an automatic yes. It's automatically better to have this kind of Crayola crayon box version of diversity where people are interchangeable. Individuals are interchangeable as long as they meet the certain criteria. That's better than handpicking individuals who are the best and have certain, things to bring to bear and bring to the class and bring to the school and so forth that give us a well-rounded student body of individuals who have things to offer that go well beyond skin deep. And when we're all done with that, if you end up with a nice hodgepodge of what people look like, okay, I don't think that's bad if that you ended up there organically. But if you start there and then you go, okay, well, we need, 10% of the class to be Black or brown and come from, lower socioeconomic levels, blah, 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 and be on scholarship and so forth. Now go find me the best of those. Ew. That's just ew. I'm sorry. I think you're going about it the wrong way. First of all, have a little more faith in the students. Have a little more faith in the class you'll organically build. I think there are schools that do that, by the way, and I think they probably do a good job. But I think there's schools like Harvard that don't. I think there's schools like Harvard that go, nope, no more Asians. Not literally no more, but, limit them. And they had a policy in place for that. But in elementary school, middle school, high school, representative diversity, whether it's amongst the student body or the curriculum, is creepy and weird and arbitrary. And kids pick up on it. And the lesson you're teaching them is that human beings, individual human beings, are interchangeable cogs based on external, immutable characteristics. That is a very bad message. Very bad. If what you want is to have a society and a culture that treats individuals with respect and dignity and does not judge people by the color of their skin or other immutable characteristics, then representative diversity is something you should not want. Okay? Diversity of thought would be much better, and you could have people in a room who all look the same. They all look exactly the same, but they have very different thoughts and very different ideas. You could have people in a room who all look very, very different, but guess what? They think like the Borg. And that's what we're creating. When you treat people as though they're interchangeable, that's what you get. And what they look like doesn't matter. So that's today's word or cluster of words. I hope this was helpful for you. Agreement is not required, of course, but I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you have a word to submit, this one was submitted by a viewer, please submit it and I will try to accommodate. Thanks for watching.